Dham Vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtan Ki Jai. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Sodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tiravanachari Jai Shri Radha Madhava Jai Srila Prabhupada Gol Premanande Hari Hari Bol. So today we're reading from, let me first, Om Jnana Timirandasya Ganangana Shalakaya Chakshun Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Jai Srila Prabhupada. So welcome everyone to our Srimad Bhagavatam, our daily Srimad Bhagavatam reading and discussion. A welcome to our new guests, residents. Are you in Krishnapad or you're visiting? Oh, fantastic. It's a beautiful program there. I'm sure you'll love it. So welcome. In any of our temples anywhere in the world, at this time, there's always a Bhagavatam discourse. So today we're reading from 3rd Canto, chapter 21, verses 9 to 11. It's continuing the chapter entitled Conversations Between Manu and Kadama. So verse 9 and 10 don't have purports, so I'll read them, and then verse 11 has purports. Satam virajam arkabhyam Satam virajam arkabhyam Sita padmod kalasrajam Sita padmod kalasrajam Snigdha nila lakavrata Snigdha nila kalavarta Vaktrabjam virajom baram Vaktrabjam virajom baram. It's a tricky one. It's virajom baram. It's Vaktrabjam virajo imbaram. So then you run the virajom baram together. Satam virajam akabhyam Sita padmod palasrajam Snigdha nila lakavrata Vaktrabjam virajom baram. Satam virajam arkabhyam Sita padmot palavrajam Snigdha nila lakata vraja Vaktrabjam virajom baram. Any of the ladies, do you want to give it a go, as they say? Satam virajam arkabhyam Sita padmot palasrajam Snigdha nilalaka vrata Bhaktrabjam virajom varam. Very nice. Synonyms: Sa, that Kadama Muni. Tam, him. Virajam, without contamination. Aka Abhyam, effulgent like the sun. Sita, white. Padma, lotuses. Utpala, water lilies. Srajam, garland. Snigdha, slick. Nila, blackish blue. Alaka, of locks of hair. Rata, and abundance. Vaktara, face. Abjam, lotus-like. Viraja, spotless. Ambaram, clothing. Translation: Kadama Muni saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is free from material contamination, in his eternal form, effulgent like the sun, wearing a garland of white lotuses and water lilies. The Lord was clad in spotless yellow silk, and his lotus face was fringed with slick, dark locks of curly hair. Such beautiful descriptions. So verse 10, I'll just read it. Kiritinam kundalinam shanka chakra gadadharam svetot pala kridanakam manasparsha smitekshanam. Excuse me. Translation: adorned with a crown and earrings, he held his characteristic conch, disc, and mace in 3 of his hands, and a white lily in the 4th. He glanced about in a happy, smiling mood, whose sight captivates the hearts of all devotees. Verse 11, Vinyasta charanambojam amsadeshi garutmata dristva ke vashtitam vaksha shriyam kustoba kandaram. Translation: a golden streak on his chest, the famous Kustuba gem suspended from his neck. He stood in the air with his lotus feet placed on the shoulders of Garuda. So, reading the purport of verse 11. His descriptions are so beautiful and so transcendental. And when we're chanting, we can hear the name and we can think about the description of the Lord. So, the purport. The descriptions in verses 9 to 11 of the Lord in his transcendental eternal form are understood to be descriptions from the authoritative Vedic version. These descriptions are certainly not the imagination of Kadama Muni. The decorations of the Lord are beyond material conception, as admitted even by impersonalists like Shankaracharya. He said, Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has nothing to do with the material creation. The varieties of the transcendental Lord, his body, his form, his dress, his instruction, his words, are not manufactured by the material energy, but are all confirmed in the Vedic literature. By performance of yoga, Kadama Muni actually saw the Supreme Lord as he is. There was no point in seeing an imagined form of God after practicing yoga for 10,000 years. The perfection of yoga, therefore, does not terminate in voidness or impersonalism. On the contrary, the perfection of yoga is attained when one actually sees the personality of Godhead in his eternal form. The process of Krishna consciousness is to deliver the form of Krishna directly. The form of Krishna is described in the authoritative Vedic literature Brahma Samhita. His abode is made of Chintamani stone, and the Lord plays there as a cowherd boy and is served by many thousands of gopis. These descriptions are authoritative, and a Krishna-conscious person takes them directly, acts on them, preaches them, and practices devotional service as enjoined in the authoritative scriptures. So we couldn't get any more clear than that. Last few verses we've been talking about that. Maharaj touched on it yesterday. So that there's a number of really important points to take away from these verses, in this 11th verse in particular. And the first is that it's describing the Lord's beautiful form. I mean, our eyes are very attracted to beauty. You know, ladies are looking in their Vogue magazines and their Clio's. I don't know if those magazines still exist, but... and they're looking at this perfection and trying to achieve the perfection. So even young women are having, you know, different surgeries to change their noses, change their eyebrows, lots of manufacturing going on there, because we're all attracted to beauty. You see something beautiful in the shop, in the street, beautiful flower, beautiful person, automatically our eyes are attracted to it. But when we look at the Supreme Lord's form, it's transcendentally beautiful. And it's really interesting with Radha Govardhana Dari. Sometimes his expression changes, and sometimes he looks more plump than other times. It's really quite interesting. And the other day he was smiling so broadly, and I was thinking, oh, maybe he's smiling at Mukunda Maharaj because Mukunda Maharaj was standing right in front of him. But these descriptions aren't imagination. My imagining that Krishna's smiling at a particular person, that's my takeaway from it, but not necessarily that's the case. But in all of these descriptions that we read, they're completely bona fide, and they've got nothing to do with the material world. And then the other point is about the decorations of the Lord, because they're personalities, they're not just inert matter. These are great, great souls who have had the opportunity to be his flute. And, for example, and the personality of the flute in Chaitanya Lila appears as Vamsi Vadan. And he appears there, he's given the task by Lord Chaitanya to protect his mother and his wife. So the flute is very, very special. So the varieties of the Transcendental Lord, so his body, his form, his dress, his ornaments, his words, they're not manufactured. Not some sage sitting there in a forest thinking, let me see, let me guess, and then he comes up with some concoction. It's nothing like that. Even there's a part of the Vedas that describes how to create a deity, how to carve a deity, and that's done right to the very letter. I forget what that sastra's called, but there's no manufacturing. Oh, I think I'll make, Krishna's head tilted further, or I think I'll have his arms in a certain way, but it's all dictated by the sastra, the authoritative directions. And then the fourth point that we read was about the perfection of yoga. So it's the perfection of yoga to be able to sit in meditation. Of course, as Maharaj said yesterday, that's not possible in Kali Yuga. And Kadama Muni was in such a yuga with a lifespan of 100,000 years. So what's that, 10% of it? He for 10,000 years, he did his meditation. But our lives are very short. So such a yuga, you had 100,000 years. Treta Yuga, 10,000 years. Dwapara Yuga, 1,000 years. And in Kali Yuga, how long? If we're lucky, or not lucky, 100 years. Yeah, these days, don't say that, I'm in my 70s. So we've all got that short duration of life. And it's so important that we utilise that properly. Not look at the magazines to say what's the latest fashion, or they're not wearing stilettos anymore, they're wearing something else. Don't waste your time in that. So we're employing all of our time and energy in perfecting this bhakti yoga, which is the ultimate yoga for this age. And then Prabhupada says in the final point that I gathered from this is that the process of Krishna consciousness is to deliver the form of Krishna directly. And Srila Prabhupada, initially we didn't have deities in our temples, not many temples, but Srila Prabhupada shortly introduced deities. And our first deity was a little Jagannath, Baladev Subhadra. And Malati had seen them in an Indian store. Malati is one of our very, very early devotees. And she thought, oh, these are cute little Indian things. So she took one of them to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was like, Jai Jagannath. I actually can't remember which of the three deities that she showed Prabhupada. So then Prabhupada asked her, are there more of these? And she said, yeah, there's two others. Prabhupada said, bring them. And then her husband Shamashunda created the first large Jagannath deities. So it was very special when we had those deities. And the first Rath Yatra was just on a flatbed truck. And I have a very old transparency really. I don't know if any of you young people know what a transparency is, but it's just a little thing, it's not a photograph, and you can get it developed into a photograph of the Jagannath Baladev Subhadra on the back of this flatbed truck. So let's talk a little bit about Kadamba Muni and his wife Devahuti. Devahuti hasn't been mentioned yet, but Kadamba Muni's been mentioned a lot. So in the third canto, in the fourth verse, just going back a few verses, it describes that Kadamba Muni's wife Devahuti was a great yogini. It wasn't just the guys who were great yogis, but there were great yoginis as well. And she was very much advanced in performing the eightfold yoga system. And those 8 divisions are described as control of the senses, strict following of the rules and regulations. She was very austere. Practice of the different sitting postures, or the different asanas, control of the breath, so pranayam, she was expert in pranayam, withdrawing senses from sense objects. So she had great control over her senses. Concentration of the mind. She could sit there in meditation like her husband. And meditation and self-realization. And after self-realization, there are 8 further perfectional stages which are called yoga siddhis. And they're all the different ability to be lighter than air, to appear in one place and then a second later be in another place, all the 8 yogic siddhis. And that was Devahuti, her husband. And keep in mind that, as I mentioned before, he meditated for 10,000 years. I can't even sit still for about 5 minutes. So for 10,000 years, immersed in deep, deep meditation. And he performed these tapasyas, as I said, in Satya Yuga, about 10% of his life. So, of course, with the onset of Kali Yuga, our life duration is shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. And recently, a dear friend of a family member of mine passed away at the age of about 46 from a massive heart attack. So, padam yagvi padam natesha. There's danger at every step. So what do? We're trying to think of Krishna. We're trying to meditate on the Lord so that at any time we'll be prepared to meet our end. Because that's not easy, but we have to try. So her husband Kadamba Muni was likened to, was called a Mahayogi, great yogi, great mystic. And she was a yoga lakshana, or one advanced in yoga. And of course, performing silent meditation in this age is not recommended. We physically and mentally cannot do it, and it's not recommended for this age. And when Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he asked Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Chaitanya Charitamrita, which item is most important in the execution of devotional service? And what did the Lord reply? He replied that the most important item was the chanting of the holy name, chanting our japa, chanting our in kirtan. And Mahaprabhu added a very famous verse that we all know, Harinama, Harinama, Harinama eva kevalam, kalo nasteva, nasteva, gatir anyata. In this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, Kali Yuga is really a terrible age to be born in. The only benefit is that we're so close to the appearance of Mahaprabhu. So close, just 540, 550 years ago. It's very close in terms of history, very, very close. And of course, Srila Prabhupada, he was with us not long ago at all. So Mahaprabhu says, in this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, the only means of deliverance is the chanting of the holy name of the Lord. There is no other way, there is no other way, there is no other way. And always that repetition is for emphasis. Prabhupada would use that a lot, and these verses you can see, they're emphasising very similar themes. So Kadama Muni and Devahuti, they were very blessed because they had a son who was an incarnation of Krishna called Kapila, and you'll learn about him later on. And Kapila is very famous because he's an incarnation, of course, and he enlightened his mother Devahuti. And she became fully cleansed of the mud of the material modes. I love that, mud of the material modes, and therefore achieved liberation, the path of Kapila. So Kadama Muni, he attained that success, practicing 10,000 years, performing that terrible austerity, and then the Lord appeared before him because the Lord was very pleased with him. And Prabhupada consistently emphasised the point in the previous verse, other verses, these verses, that the Lord's form is not imaginary. This is how the Lord looked. So sometimes the impersonalists recommend that one can just arbitrarily concentrate on one's mind and just imagine the form of the Lord that pleases you, that you like. And I remember when I was, before I became a devotee or before I became an aspiring devotee, I used to conjure up all kinds of ideas of what God looked like. Of course, growing up as a Catholic, God was a very venerable senior citizen with big beard and long white flowing robes, a Caucasian, of course, which he probably wasn't. And then after, I rejected that aspect, I started to imagine, along with all my other friends, imagining what God must look like. Oh, he's just an energy, it's a white light. We had all these, concoctions that we were thinking what the Supreme Truth was. Fortunately, I had the great good fortune of meeting Prabhupada and the devotees and reading Bhagavad Gita, and that soon dispelled my foolish speculations. So he didn't discover, Kadama Muni didn't discover any imaginary form as alleged by rascals. Apparently there's some rascal philosophers out there who say that he just imagined form. He actually saw the eternal, blissful and transcendental form of Krishna, just like Dhruva Maharaj, but he only saw Krishna for a very short time. So it's foolish, Prabhupada keeps on emphasising, to speculate on the form of the Lord. In this chapter, Krishna appears as Vishnu, his four-handed form, not his two-handed, three-place bending form. So these beautiful voices are glorifying the form of the Lord. And what is it like for the devotee? It's like nectar for our ears. We can't drink it up enough. Just listening to these beautiful, beautiful pastimes of the Lord in Bhagavatam, the pastimes of his associates, and how he looks. You don't have to guess. Oh, I think God looks like this. No, it's all there for us. And in Majja Lila 6.255 it states, Kalanastam bhakti yogam nijam ya pradushkatam Krishna chaitanya nam avibhutas tasya padara vinde gadam lilatam chitta bringa, which is, let my consciousness, which is like a honeybee, take shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who has just now appeared as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to teach the ancient system of devotional service to himself. This system had almost been lost due to the influence of time. And this is one of the two verses that Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya composed on a leaf of a palm tree. And he'd given this palm leaf to Jagadananda Prabhu, requesting him, please deliver these verses on the palm leaves to Lord Chaitanya. And the other verse which precedes that verse goes, let me take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, who has descended in the form of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to teach us real knowledge, his devotional service and detachment from whatever does not foster Krishna consciousness. He has descended because he is an ocean of transcendental mercy. Let me surrender unto his lotus feet. So have you ever heard that phrase, where attention goes, energy flows? It's actually from this very famous book in the 70s called The Celestine Prophecy. All the hippies were reading, I actually never read it, but they were reading this Celestine prophecy, and in there's a statement, where attention goes, energy flows. So in ISKCON, we're attempting to follow the path of bhakti, following our sadhana practice, our chanting of 16 rounds, following of the 4 regulative principles. So when we're concentrating like that, then what's the next step? Automatically that's where our mind goes, and automatically that's where our energy goes. So we want to read more, we want to chant more, we want to attend temple programs, associate with the devotees. There's nothing more wonderful than when you see devotees. Your heart automatically opens and you feel very happy. There's a devotee of the Lord. It's very exciting. And I remember as a very, very new devotee, when we're out in Harinam and I have to run off to get a drink of water or something, because in those days we just do Harinam all day. And then from a distance you hear the ding, 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 ding of the kartals, and immediately your heart would leap out of your chest and you'd go running down the street to rejoin the Sankirtan party. Of course, sometimes if I was very tired, I'd sneak off. I'd get further and further back in the Harinam party, and I'd go to the Botanic Gardens and have a little snooze for half an hour. You'd come back, where have you been, Bhakti Carol? So Prabhupada often reminded us when he was with us, and you'll hear devotees talking about it, try and encourage us to read Prabhupada's books regularly. Not pick up, once a year or even once a week, but try and set aside time to read and study Prabhupada's books. It's very rewarding, and I always like to take notes. I have a couple of books that are about that size, and they've got the alphabet in the side with them, so when I read something interesting about Lord Brahma, I go to that book and I write something about Lord Brahma. And I've been doing that since the 80s. So it's really nice to record what you're reading and you're studying. It helps you remember. But, with our Kali Yuga memory, sometimes it's hard. Now, where did I read that? And what exactly did it say? And then you just go back and you've got your notebook. So if we're not regularly immersing ourselves in the study of these sublime literatures, our energy, what it will do, it will flow elsewhere. Because we're by nature active, we have to be doing something. So if we're not doing or creating a higher purpose for ourselves, then our attraction will be to more base pleasures. So one thing that we can think of to encourage us to read and study Prabhupada's books is that we can think about all the sacrifices Prabhupada made in order to translate those books. So sometimes when I think, I'm too tired, I can't think, my eyes are hurting, I can't read, you think, what did Prabhupada do for us in the translation? And for our new guests, right when Srila Prabhupada was leaving his body, preparing to return back to Krishna, he was so emaciated, he hadn't eaten for months. The skin there was no separation between the nerves and the skin because there was no fat. And even the touch of the sheet was agony. And what was Prabhupada doing? Someone was holding the microphone, someone was holding the book, and he was translating. He translated up to 10th canto, chapter 13, is that correct? Up to chapter 13. So that's always a big motivation for us when we get caught up in our busy lives and we can't, it's just too much, I can't
focus, I can't concentrate, I'm too busy, the kids are howling, this thing, that thing. Just try and find, even if it's 10 minutes, and those 10 minutes will grow to 15, and the 15 to half an hour, and half an hour to an hour, where you can find time. Because there's no way we can repay Prabhupada for what he did, how he saved us, saving the world in fact, but we can at least repay that. Prabhupada, you sacrificed so much for us. At least I can have a little bit of self-control and I can read Prabhupada's books and study them. So in a way it's our duty as Prabhupada Nugas, followers of Srila Prabhupada, that we do that. And we're so fortunate that we have the blessings to have this close contact with the pure devotee of the Lord, the person Bhagavat. And in the introduction to Bhagavatam, Prabhupada says this: it is imperative that one learn the Srimad Bhagavatam from the person Bhagavatam. The person Bhagavatam is one whose very life is Srimad Bhagavatam in practice. And that was Srila Prabhupada's life. Every second. He had no downtime, no private time. You could go any time to see Prabhupada. I mean, you couldn't literally go and see him any time, but if you saw Prabhupada any time, he would be engaged in devotional service. And since Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the absolute personality of Godhead, he is both Bhagavan and Bhagavatam in person and in sound. Therefore, his process of approaching the Srimad Bhagavatam is practical for all people of the world. It was his wish that the Srimad Bhagavatam be preached in every nook and corner of the world by those who happen to take birth in India. So Prabhupada's encouraging the Paradeshis to take up this dissemination of Bhagavatam. And so when we associate with the book Bhagavat, we've got the Srimad Bhagavatam. So our energy and our attention is connected with the essentials of spiritual life. We can do heaps and heaps and heaps of service. We can be busy from morning to night. But if we're not chanting 16 rounds and we're not regularly studying Srila Prabhupada's books, Vedic literature, then our attention becomes dispelled. And that's when we become spiritually weak. And it's like that open door there. We don't have to open the door to Maya. She's right there. And there's just a little chink open. She slides in. So it's like we're protecting ourselves. We've got spiritual armour. When we chant our 16 rounds, we attend the temple, we study, we read, of course we're following the regulative principles, then we become spiritually strong and protected. And of course, I'm not for any moment proposing that your children don't get full attention. We all have to work, you have to earn money, you have to study, you have families, husbands, wives, children. I'm not remotely suggesting that they're neglected, but there's always that little time. I don't know if anyone does this, but on Facebook there's those reels. I've only recently discovered those, luckily recently. And it's amazing how you can go, oh, look at that cute little cat and that cute little dog, and then you look at 15 minutes later, you've been drowning in these stupid reels. So, and that, I have to say that sometimes has happened to me, and then I go, hang on a second, you're just being sucked into this vortex. So we can always find some time, Life is busy, and we can lose our concentration, but if we have that little bit of discipline, then we can become stronger and stronger. And then what happens? You develop that taste. You develop that taste for reading. At first, just when we're beginning to chant 16 rounds, it's a bit of a battle. And yes, we've got to concentrate our mind and focus and find the time for it. But when we do, we start developing that taste. And it's the same with reading. We develop that taste for hearing Prabhupada's words. Because for the Prabhupada, these words are written by Krishna. Prabhupada said, I'm just the pen. So when we read Bhagavatam, we're not only associating with the book of the person Bhagavat, but we're associating with Krishna. And if we need more encouragement to read, you can set up a little book club. There's a number of devotees that have, a book club once a week or once a fortnight. And even sometimes you can Zoom it. You might have friends who just can't meet in the same place. And they're a great way to encourage you to read. So you get together a group of friends, you read, you discuss, and it can just be half an hour or 15 minutes, but they're very, very valuable to do. And that's another way of fanning the fire of becoming, involved in studying and reading these transcendental narrations. So why are they so important? Well, in 2nd Canto, chapter 8, verse 3, in the purport, Prabhupada writes, "To be fully engaged in hearing the transcendental narration described in the text of Srimad Bhagavatam means to constantly associate with the Supreme Soul, Sri Krishna. And to constantly associate with the Supreme Lord Krishna means to be liberated from the qualities of matter. Lord Krishna is like the sun, and material contamination is like darkness. As the presence of the sun dissipates darkness, constant engagement in the association of Lord Sri Krishna frees one from the contamination of material qualities." So we're getting a lot out of it. We're just not exercising our mind, but we're becoming free from all of these mundane qualities. So when we read those descriptions about the form of the Lord, it was transcendental. And even when he appears in the material world, he's in a transcendental form. And Krishna is Bhagavan, possessor of the 6 opulences in totality. We're little qualities of Krishna, but not the quantity. Krishna's full. And there's some beautiful descriptions in the Vishnu Purana, very famous verse. Aishvaryasya samagrasya viryasya yashasa shriya jnana viragya yoschaiva sanam bhaga itingana. Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is thus defined by Parasara Muni as one who is full in 6 opulences. And now I get some help from the audience who would like to name one of the opulences. Yes. Beauty. Or renunciation. Strength. We missed one? Fame. Or fame. So Ashvaryasya Samagrasa is full wealth. Viryasya is strength. Yashasa is fame. Shriya is beauty. Jnana is knowledge. Viragya, renunciation. And then the rest of the words in the verse. Sanam, all 6. Bhaga, opulence. Itingana is. And Rupa Goswami describes in Nectar of Devotion, I mean, you could go on, there's so many beautiful descriptions, but I'll just read some of them. So in 21st chapter, Rupa Goswami, after consulting various scriptures, has enumerated the transcendental qualities of the Lord as follows. And these are so beautiful just to meditate on. So, he has beautiful features of the entire body. He's marked with all auspicious characteristics. He's extremely pleasing, effulgent. It's described that even just a toenail of Krishna's toe is like the rising moon. It's so effulgent. He's strong, he's ever youthful, wonderful linguist. He could talk to animals even, Lord Krishna. Truthful, talks pleasingly, fluent, highly learned, highly intelligent, a genius, artistic, extremely clever, expert, grateful, firmly determined, an expert judge of time and circumstances, sees and speaks on the authority of the Vedas or scriptures, pure, self-controlled, steadfast, forbearing, forgiving, grave, self-satisfied, possessing equilibrium, magnanimous, religious, heroic, compassionate, respectful, gentle, liberal, and it goes on. There's so many of them, and that's in chapter 21, if you would like to read Nectar of Devotion. It goes on, goes up to 50, and then the 43rd, all famous, 44 popular, partial to devotees, very attractive to all women. Whenever when Krishna appeared on this earth planet, when all the ladies saw him, they would swoon because of his beauty. And he's the supreme controller. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has all these 50 transcendental qualities in fullness, as deep as the ocean. In other words, the extent of his qualities is inconceivable. So you can't even just say, oh, there's just these 50. He has so many wonderful qualities that even Seshanaga has thousands and thousands of heads and mouths, cannot describe all of the qualities of Krishna. And besides those 50 qualities, he's got 5 more. And those 5 are sometimes partially manifested in the persons of Lord Brahma or Shiva. So these are changeless, all cognizant, ever fresh, Satchidananda, possessing the eternal blissful body, and possessing all. So those 5 other qualities, everyone can hear, okay? Who are manifest in the body of Narayan are, he has inconceivable potency, uncountable universes generate from his body, he is the original source of all incarnations, he is the giver of salvation to the enemies whom he kills. Krishna is so merciful that even if a demon tries to kill Krishna, he liberates them. So merciful. And he is the he is the attractor of liberated souls, and these transcendental qualities are wonderfully manifest in Krishna. And besides these 60 transcendental qualities, he has 4 more, which are not even manifest in the form of Narayan, or the 4-handed form. And these are, he's a performer of wonderful pastimes, especially his childhood pastimes. He's surrounded by devotees, endowed with wonderful love of Godhead. He can attract all living entities all over the universes by playing on his flute, and he has a wonderful excellence of beauty that cannot be rivaled anywhere in this creation. And these wonderful verses that we've been reading and studying are talking about these beautiful things. So because these verses have been discussing the beautiful form of the Lord, I just want to read these out to you. So Rupa Goswami says that Krishna's face is as beautiful as the moon. His thighs are powerful, just like the trunks of elephants. His arms are just like 2 pillars. His palms are expanded like lotus flowers. His chest is just like a doorway. It's just an incredible thing to try and imagine. His hips are dens, and the middle of his body is a terrace. So these are very beautiful poetic descriptions. And in verse 9 that we read, we spoke about his eternal form, free from material contamination. Kadamba saw him in his 4-handed form, and his effulgent form was like the effulgence of the sun. And what kind of garland does he wear? In that particular verse 9, what colour? White lotuses and water lilies. I'd never read, I couldn't remember reading a description where Krishna wears water lilies. But he wears water lilies, and a garland of, and white lotuses. And what kind of cloth was he covered with? Green? Yellow. Spotless yellow silk. And what about his hair? It's fringed with curly, black, slick locks. So with slick locks, maybe Mother Yasoda massaged some beautiful coconut oil in his hair. He had slick, they were very shiny. That's my speculation, by the way. It's not in the scripture. Just make that clear. Oh yeah, Krsnarupa said that Krishna puts coconut oil in his hair. No, it's not my guesswork there. And then verse 10 further describes his beauty. He's adorned with a crown and earrings. And in other parts of Bhagavatam, it describes his earrings as shark-shaped earrings. Very beautiful. You can find that design in India. And he holds his conch, his disc. His disc is like chakra, will cut off the heads of the demon, and his mace or his club in his hands, and a white lily in the fourth. And what's his mood like? We just read. Well, he's smiling, he's happy, he's always in a really good mood. And his sight captivates the hearts of the devotees. They see Krishna, they're captivated. Then in verse 11, we read that his chest bears the golden mark, the Srivatsa mark, or streak, and the famous Krsnarupa gem suspended from his neck. And then he's standing, and Garuda is hovering, and he's standing on the shoulders of Garuda. And there's beautiful description. Just read them and reread them. Maybe later today you can reread them and just think about all these beautiful qualities. And in the 10th canto, chapter 13, which is what Prabhupada translated up to, he writes that in the Vaishnava Toshani, Srivatsa is described as being a curl of fine yellow hair on the upper portion of the right side of Lord Vishnu's chest. It's a special mark that, for instance, distinguishes Vishnu from those who have achieved Sarupya Shakti, having the same form as the Lord. So there's one planet in Vaikuntha where you can have the same form as Krishna. Because you're not Krishna, but you look like Krishna. But there's two marks that distinguish. There's the Srivatsa, and then there's the Kaustubha. Of course, all the devotees there know that who's Krishna, who's not Krishna, but these are two of the distinguishing marks. So the Vaishnava Toshani, it was a commentary on the 10th canto by Sanatana Goswami. So in 4th canto, in the word for word, the Krsnarupa gem is described as a pearl. It's very interesting. Sometimes it's described as a gem, came from the churning of the ocean of milk, and other times as a pearl. So in this particular 4th 24:49, it says, "The Lord has shoulders like a lion's. Upon these shoulders are garlands, necklaces, and epaulets of these things. And all of these are always glittering. Besides these, there is the beauty of the Kaustubha Mani pearl. And on the dark chest of the Lord there are streaks named Srivatsa, which are signs of the goddess of fortune. The glittering of these streaks excels the beauty of the golden streaks on a gold testing stone. Indeed, such beauty defeats a gold testing stone." Has anyone been to India? Down your guess? If you go to a gold shop and you want to test that something's gold, maybe you have some gold you want to sell or whatever, they bring out this little stone and then they rub the gold on it. And if it's gold, it leaves these beautiful golden streaks appear in the black stone. So in the purport to that verse, Prabhupada says, "The curling hair on the shoulders of a lion always appears very, very beautiful. Similarly, the shoulders of the Lord were just like a lion's, and the necklace and garlands, along with the Kaustubha pearl necklace, combined to excel the beauty of a lion. The chest of the Lord is streaked with Srivatsa lines, the sign of the goddess of fortune. Consequently, the Lord's chest excels the beauty of a testing stone for gold, and that's called the siliceous stone, on which gold is rubbed to test its value. It always looks very beautiful, being streaked with gold lines, and it does look really lovely. Yet the chest of the Lord excels such a stone in its beauty." And in the 8th canto, it describes how the Kaustubha was generated from the ocean of milk, and Vishnu took the gem and placed it on his chest. So sometimes it's referred to as a gem, sometimes it's a pearl. We'll have to wait and see. So just about the representation of Lakshmi Devi on Krishna's chest, the goddess of fortune. So when she saw Krishna, she wanted to gain the favour of the Lord, and so she started to meditate. And when Krishna asked her, "Why you are meditating, dear Lakshmi Devi?" she said, "I want to be one of your associates like the gopis in Vrindavan." And hearing this, Krishna replied, "No, that's not possible." Lakshmi Devi said that she wanted to remain just like a golden line on the chest of the Lord. So the Lord granted her request, and then Lakshmi has always been situated on the chest of Lord Krishna as a golden lion. And then, of course, there's a mention of Garuda. And a beautiful, Garuda is a great devotee and personality, and it's described that he is an incarnation of the Brahman feature of the Lord, and that's described in 4th canto. And also Lord Shiva and Ananta is described as that as well. And when Garuda flies, his wings vibrate the Samaveda. So he's just not flapping. As Lord Vishnu is there on the shoulders of Garuda, and Garuda's wings are reciting the Samaveda. And one ring recites the Brihat section and the other the Ratantara section as he flies. So, in conclusion, just to recap, we've been hearing about the many wonderful qualities of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, how Anantasesha has unlimited mouths, but he cannot enunciate all the transcendental qualities of Krishna. And Krishna is always expanding, always enjoying. He measures his transcendental pleasure, then there's the increment, trying to enjoy even more. And then he measures it, and then he tries to enjoy even more. So, of course, Krishna's enjoyment is transcendental and not material. But it's ever expanding. You can never reach the end of it. Just like when you read Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita. You think, okay, all right, I finished that now. I'll go on to the next thing. You can read and reread and reread, and you'll still get newness and freshness out of it because it's transcendental literature. It's not mundane literature. So we learnt about not speculating on what the Lord looks like and how his descriptions are specifically laid out in Bhagavatam and other Vedic literatures. And we spoke about the importance of reading Srila Prabhupada's books, studying Prabhupada's books, because where our focus goes, our energy flows. So we try and fill up the cup with as much transcendental nectar as we can, and it leaves less and less room for mundane things. Of course, we have our duty, we have our responsibilities, they must be performed, but we also can fill up our consciousness with Krishna. And we spoke about in Kali Yuga, what's the best form of meditation? It's chanting japa and kirtan. And we touched on some of the qualities that Rupa Goswami describes the Lord, and we heard about the Kasturba gem/pearl, and we heard about the Srivatsa mark. And there'll be a test tomorrow morning at... I'm joking. It's always good to take notes when you hear things that are very kind of factual, by the way. So thank you very much for your patient listening. Are there any comments, questions? Oh, I think you have to take this one. Oh.
Very nice class, thank you.
Thank you.
You spoke about the how people connected to the Lord back in other ages, one being sitting for many, many thousands of years in meditation. Ramai Swami also spoke about that yesterday. Then you spoke a bit later on in the class how you can get caught in today's world flicking through social media. And I've mentioned this in class before, but it's said that we receive as much information in one day as they would in a lifetime over 2,500 years ago. So we're completely bamboozled with information day in and day out. And that's why we can't sit in meditation for so many years. Because, we just got so much distraction in today's world, in the age of Kali. And the best way is to chant Hare Krishna. And just another point, when you were talking about the potency of chanting and also reading Srila Prabhupada's books, your godbrother Bhakti Tirtha Swami, a great disciple of Srila Prabhupada, he often stated that if one chants 16 rounds and reads 2 hours a day, Maya doesn't go near that devotee of Krishna. So we should always be trying to keep our standards at that level, chanting our rounds, reading Prabhupada's books, and it makes spiritual life much more relishable, not a big struggle when you push those kind of, the chanting and the reading to the wayside.
Very nice points.
So yeah, thank you for your class.
Thank you. Really, really good points. And the point too is that it doesn't become a hardship. At first, it's like, oh, I've got to sit down, I've got to read this, I've got to, But after a while, that taste develops, and then it becomes, oh, great, now it's my reading time. Oh, I couldn't read because I had to do this. Okay, now I can read. And I've always found, try to read in the morning if you can. Of course, 2 hours is wonderful, but, these days we do have a lot of services to do, a lot of responsibilities to do, but at least sometimes sit down, and then you gradually can increase it. And then it becomes, now's my time to swim in the nectar of Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, nectar of devotion, nectar of instruction, etc. It becomes a really joyful, exciting process. And then trying to remember what you've learned. Another really great way of remembering what you've learned or read is you share it. You say to someone, hey, I read this really awesome thing today about etc., etc. And that's a really nice way to kind of, make your association positive and full of nectar.
Your point also on Maya was really nice about the door being open and Maya coming through. And Srila Prabhupada made a statement, you can correct me on this one, that he said that the Westerners, I don't know if it was Westerners or just devotees in general, aren't afraid enough of Maya, the illusionary energy, very powerful. And another god brother of yours, Prabhunath Prabhu from England, he mentioned in a class once that Maya's just like, you don't see much these days, but they used to have these wood grinders on doors, and they would take little bits of timber off at a time to get the right size. And he said that's what Maya's like to the living entity, just day by day. You give Maya an inch, it's just slowly just grinding away. Yes. So yeah, always been on our toes, and just following the process, and yeah. Yeah,
really, really good points, Padmalochan Prabhu. And Prabhupada said, one devotee said to Prabhupada, I forget who it was now, said to Prabhupada, oh, Prabhupada, I was really in Maya today. And Prabhupada looked at him and said, you're always in Maya. It was Giriraj. And Prabhupada had a very, good sense of humour. I was listening to Sri Kirti Prabhu, who was a servant of Prabhupada's for a number of years. And he was in Mayapur, and when you go to Mayapur, you can see Prabhupada's rooms and all of his things there. But he was talking about that pastime of this incident that happened when Sri Kirti was taking Prabhupada, because they didn't have running water up on that level, so he'd have to carry the buckets up for Prabhupada's bath and after his massage. And he said he'd have 2 buckets and he'd heat them up with a little Indian immersion heater. And then he was carrying the buckets into the bathroom, and then he saw a cobra in Prabhupada's bathroom. Immediately, he dropped the buckets, shut the door, and Prabhupada was giving a darshan or a discussion in his room, so he didn't want to run in there and disturb that. And then he saw one of the co-directors there, and he went, oh, there's a cobra in the bathroom, there's a cobra in the bathroom. So he goes running into Prabhupada, very dramatic. Prabhupada, there's a cobra in the bathroom, the cobra in the bathroom. So Prabhupada went, oh, all right. So they went to the bathroom, and one devotee there, Rasaparayan, who was kind of like a bodyguard, quite Kshatriya type of person. He had a little knife. I don't know why no one got a big stick, but he had a little knife. And they gingerly opened the bathroom door, and the cobra, there was an open pipe, and the cobra, I could see the cobra going into the pipe, going down. So Rasaparayan grabbed the cobra's tail, and with his little knife, he had to kill it, because cobras, one bite, you're finished. So then all the devotees were speculating, oh, it was so-and-so because they wanted to hurt Prabhupada. No, it was, I won't repeat exactly what was said, but it was so-and-so who did this. No, it was that group that did that. And then Prabhupada's kind of chuckling, you know. And then they realised that actually, just as the snake went down the pipe, the snake had come up by the pipe. And then Prabhupada was taking advantage of how frightened his disciples were about this cobra and the snake, Western devotees. And then Prabhupada was telling them about this story. He said, oh, do you know that when a cobra is killed, the last image it sees is the image of its killer, and it's imprinted on its eyelids. So when the cobra's mate comes along, see, oh, my dead mate, it sees in the cobra's eyes the photo, the picture of her partner's killer. So then she will go and search out, even if it takes her whole life, to find that killer. So Prabhupada's telling this story, and all the devotees are getting more and more scared. And then there were 3 servants in their room. There was Shrutikirti, there was Pradyumna, who was the Sanskrit editor, and I'm not sure if it was Tamal Krishna, Maharaj, one other. And then Pradyumna picked up his sleeping bag and moved it in the middle, because he thought if the snake comes, then it won't attack him, because the other 2 devotees are there first. And Prabhupada took kind of quite great delight in fanning his disciples' fear of this cobra. And then Prabhupada said, but for the devotee, there is no fear. Krishna will protect you. Do not worry. So thank you very much for listening so patiently. Jai Hare Krishna. Glories to Srila Prabhupada.